What's up, y'all? A7R3, what a device! Really, it's just incredible. So hard to overstate just how cool it is. I kind of want to go down two paths with this video. I want to go down the path of the A7R3 as an upgrade path, but also just what Sony Digital Imaging must have been thinking in the development of this camera. Stick around. I just wrapped the imaging part of my second ever volume photography gig. As a sometimes professional photographer, I was just so happy to have another big gig, and so I thought that was really awesome, and I was really excited about that. You know, in my first we used my 60 and my Alpha 6300, and this time around I only use my Alpha 6300. With the right lenses, it really is a pro body. And I realized in a very simple, clear-headed way that the A7R3 really is the nearest thing to the perfect hybrid camera, perfect hybrid interchangeable lens camera, especially for the money. But you know what, let's take the branding out of it for a minute. What does the perfect camera look like for you? For me, respectable megapixel density, not necessarily count, but density. 10 or so frames per second, 4K 30, that's been oversampled, 10 FPS, slow motion options such as 1080p 120 or better, a decent buffer, AF joystick, 2 card slots, and of course, full frame. I am a dinosaur, I love full frame. Good primes in the system, as well as a couple of good zooms. Genuinely, the A7R3 with the 24-105, 55, and 85, maybe later on the 70-200 2.8, because really these are the lenses and the focal lengths that I use on a regular basis. That combo would last me probably the next 5 to 7 years. And you know what? I haven't felt this way about a camera since I was a closed-minded Canon fanboy that thought that Sony a7, Sony mirrorless was flash in the pan, cheap thrills, and that the 6D would serve me for years to come as well as I possibly needed. But let's get on to the upgrade path. The A7R3 seems to me to be the only camera worth upgrading to, the only reasonable upgrade path if you've bought a camera in the last, a new camera in the last 3 years, and also want to upgrade. Especially if you've ordered a D850 and not received it yet. It has everything: features, reliability, weather sealing, 2 card slots. And it, in the little edges that it wins out over the D850, like usable AFC and video, and the faster mechanical shutter without a battery grip, put the A7R3 ahead of the D850 by a little bit more than a whisker. The A7R line of cameras, the R line of cameras, are no longer, it seems, supposed to be megapixel monsters. They're supposed to be general purpose monsters. They could, of course, be something else later, but for now, they seem to fill every niche for the general purpose professional camera. Really though, the A7R3, in my opinion at any rate, provides the best upgrade path in a feature and value-rich environment. More brands than ever put everything they possibly can into every device. Fuji, Panasonic, to an extent Canon, Nikon, Olympus. And the funny thing is that, including Sony of course, and the funny thing is that by doing this, they essentially lead to, buying into these devices essentially leads to having 0 upgrade paths, because you already have everything you want and need. Regarding my Alpha 6300, I don't need an A9's frame rate. I don't need incredible high resolution like 42, 45, or 50 megapixels. I don't need the buffer off of an Alpha 6500 or an A9. I don't need the sensitivity off of an A7S. And most of the time I don't need IBIS. But the way that the A7R3 brings all of these together means that there is a fantastic way for me to upgrade going forward, because it combines everything so well at such a great price point. So how do manufacturers like Sony, Fuji, Olympus, Panasonic give upgrade paths to their own devices? Panasonic and Olympus have kind of pushed their devices as far as they can go within the Micro Four Thirds format without a huge amount of investment for R&D. Sony has pushed so many features into their cameras, they're now able to focus on better mechanical and digital components, like better IBIS and the better shutter that we're seeing on the A7R3. As a key component too, Sony's also focusing on the user experience, and they're really pushing a lot of great features around the user experience, like My Menu and different custom functions for the different custom buttons in stills and video mode. The A7R3, well, The a7 III was gonna be my next long-term investment, if not a Fuji, and maybe both. I'm still into getting into Fuji, don't get me wrong, but the a7R III puts everything that I want in a camera except for Fuji color, and the size of mirrorless APS-C. But in my opinion, that's having my cake and eating it too. Until now, I haven't felt like Sony's built a camera that I can properly believe in. Good cameras, yes, without hesitation, but they weren't mature product offerings. I'd even be willing to argue that very little before the A9 was, because of what the A9 did for Sony's color science. And here's my metric. I could wait 1 or 2 years before getting into an a7R III, and I'd still probably be able to get 3 or 4 years out of it. As of now, Sony's making mature products. They're not products that in 1 or 2 years will be worth replacing. They're products that I can see myself using in the long term. And you know, in 1 or 2 years, maybe 3 years when the next couple of models have come out, I can still totally see the R3 continuing to be relevant. And I'm fully confident that it will be more than adequate for a substantial period of time. And right now, here's where I am. I'm looking at my 60 and I'm saying, how can I make this usable? How can I keep getting value out of this? And I've been thinking this way for a while, actually. And that's why the 60 Mark II hurt so bad. Because my Alpha 6300, apart from the sensor size, outperforms it on every front. And there's not really until now been a reasonable way of going forward. The 5D Mark IV isn't big news. The D850 is still a DSLR, and that's not my thing any longer. Magnificent? Yes. My thing? No. The a7R III comes in its own time, perhaps a little late, but in its own time, and boom, checks all the boxes. It'll help me grow. Simple as that. Up until now, there wasn't an upgrade path from my 6D and my Alpha 6300. If you've owned any camera in the last 3 years, apart from the D850, and you wanted to upgrade, there hasn't really been a good upgrade path until now. But let's turn this back towards the development of the device. The A7R line of cameras happen to lead the market with megapixel count, but they're not about megapixels. The megapixels are about providing incredible dynamic range and ISO performance, and without the megapixels, these heights of dynamic range and ISO performance aren't possible. Sony Digital Imaging had to push more megapixels into these devices. If SDI thought that the A7R line of cameras was about winning the resolution wars, they could have pushed a 60 plus megapixel sensor in there. But they're not trying to win the resolution wars. Sony could have slapped on a BSI module to the A7S II sensor to bring the A7S III to market quicker, permanently win the sensitivity wars. But I don't think that that's their goal. But you know what? This is what they've done. Sony Digital Imaging has instead asked themselves, what will be the best possible professional workhorse camera? What will it look like on paper? What are the important performance metrics? And then they answered those questions, and then they went out and built it. Because Sony knew what was coming. When they released the A7 and A7R, they could see the A9 down the line. With what we're seeing out of the A7R III is a ton of components from the A9 that they needed the A9 in order to build the A7R III. Sony keeps folding back the advancements they've made in their other devices into their new ones. Sony Digital Imaging has got a very clear idea of what their products should and will look like in the midterm, in a 2 to 4 year period. And in my opinion, that's what makes devices like the A7R III so exciting, is because they've been so perfectly tuned to be the best possible mirrorless interchangeable lens camera, if not hybrid interchangeable lens camera on the market today. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention in this video. I'm very much looking forward to seeing the next one. If you've stuck around this long, I'd love to ask you to check out my Amazon affiliate links in the description below. Those will kick back a small fee without impacting the price whatsoever. I'd really appreciate it if you'd look to those for your upcoming holiday shopping. So thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one.